Hi, my name is Dr. Catherine Kelly. I am an academic and a practitioner in the area of well-being and stress management. I work in my paid employment part-time. I have 2 businesses of my own. I have 2 school-going children, a boy in primary school and a boy in secondary school. So I think, like many of you, I am probably challenged at the moment with time management, juggling, and I suppose trying to keep a work and home ship afloat in a balanced way and looking for some, I suppose, calm coping strategies to deal with life at the moment. So what I want to do today is have a conversation with you about how we might cope with being well at work as we prepare maybe to return to work, or for some people maybe managing continued home working. So I realise that social media is full of, lots of lists on, the top 10 things you can do to have a happy lockdown life. So I'm going to try not to take that approach today. I just want to have a conversation with you about some of the things that we might do, because I think this pandemic has brought us a lot of new challenges. The spaces that we live in have become now the spaces that we work in. And, even the spaces that we're returning to work in won't be the same as they were before. So the first point that I really want to talk about today is the need to acknowledge this change. Okay, I think that's really important because the working world will be a very different one for lots of us as we prepare to go back into it. Some people may be working from home for a continued period. So I think there'll be a range of emotions and responses to those situations. For some, there might be relief maybe at going back to work, a welcome return to routine, seeing colleagues again, and maybe just an escape from these kind of blurred boundaries of home. But for others who are carrying on working at home, there may be a rise in fatigue, a drop in motivation, particularly for employees who are homeschooling their children. And this may be affected in terms of working mothers more so than others, perhaps. So I think across the board, no matter what your situation, there may be an increase in fear and anxiety. So this fear might be around coronavirus itself, around health. It might be a fear about safety in terms of commuting. It might be fear for working in close proximity to others again, maybe. So lots of fears and anxieties. And I think it's really important in terms of workplaces that you can sit down and create a space with your employees to express those feelings about what's happened and feelings about what might happen next. Now, when it comes to feelings, there tends to be 2 approaches. One is we avoid feelings, and the other is that we approach them. And I would suggest to you that good organizations approach the whole area of feelings. Okay, so it's just very simply sitting down and talking to your staff and asking them how they've coped, how they are now, and how they feel about coming back to work, any fears and anxieties that they might have. So there's 3 things there: ask, listen, and acknowledge. And if you really listen as employers, you'll be able to get the information that you need to come up with strategies to move forward collectively together. Okay, so the second thing I'd like to talk to you about today is the impact of stress on employee well-being. So anxiety and stress, I think, are common bedfellows, and they both have a really negative impact on both our psychological and our physical well-being, because our body and mind are really well connected. So if we're feeling anxious or worried, it tends to show up somewhere in our body. So I'll just talk about stress for a minute. I could talk about stress for a long time, having done a BSc in it, but We won't go into too many definitions and theories. Stress, very simply, is when the pressures placed on an individual exceed that individual's perceived ability to cope with them. So the word perceived is really important there, because what you might find easy to cope with might be something that somebody else finds really difficult to cope with. So that's why, again, it's really important to sit down and have a conversation with your staff about what they're going through. Ask, acknowledge, and listen. Okay? Because we don't just want our employees and colleagues to be well, we want them to work well. So I might move on to something scientific in terms of explaining stress and how it shows up in our bodies. I want to talk about two particular systems in our nervous system. So the first one is our sympathetic nervous system, our SNS, sympathetic nervous system. And this is the system in our body that deals with our panic response, the 3 Fs, freeze, flight, or fight. And when we're under pressure and under stress, this SNS system sends a signal to our amygdala, which is this part, if you reach in under your ear, a couple of centimeters inside your brain. Your amygdala, I suppose, is your panic center in your body. And it's a really important part of our body for when there is a genuine emergency. If you need to step back from a moving bus, you can get out of the way very quickly without thinking about it. But as a society at the moment, as organizations and as individuals, we are facing unprecedented levels of stress and worry because of the situation that we're in. Okay, so it's really important to acknowledge the effect that this might be having on us. And when stress signals are sent to our amygdala in our brain, then we have a whole release of stress hormones in our body. So adrenaline and cortisol, and they make us feel pretty bad, actually. So they're good for an emergency to jump back from a situation, but they're not good if they're in our bodies all the time. So what do we do when we feel stressed? If we're being positive, we'll try and do good things for ourselves, such as a little bit of meditation, maybe eat nutritious food, try to sleep well, get exercise outside. But for a lot of people, we choose negative responses. So we might start snacking more, we might turn to comfort food, have a few drinks, decide that we're not going to bother with exercise or go out. So that has a downward spiral of effect on us. Not only are our bodies under pressure with stress, with cortisol and adrenaline, we're then putting extra pressures on them in terms of toxins in our bodies. So not great. The good news is we have a second system in our body called our parasympathetic nervous system, our PNS. Now, our PNS is our rest and repair system, okay? And this works when we are calm and when we're in deep sleep. And the great news is we don't have to do anything to kickstart our PNS. It's just there. But what we do have to do is allow it to do its job. So if our sympathetic nervous system, our stress response, is taking over constantly, it can't do its job. It's the equivalent of somebody pressing an alarm button over and over again, or ringing 999 constantly. Okay? And there are real fears here at the moment. Coronavirus fear, fear for our health, worry about job security, about wages, about losing our homes, or even more fundamentally, losing loved ones. So we are in a constant state of fear at the moment. But the good news is that our parasympathetic nervous system can keep us calm if we let it, okay? It allows our cells to repair themselves, particularly our immune-fighting T cells, okay? And ironically, when we're physically and mentally stressed and worried, we can't fight illness as easily as we should. Okay, there's a whole branch of science called psychoneuroimmunology, which looks at the relationship between our minds, our nervous systems, and our immune system. I won't go into the whole science of that, but the takeout from that is just to remember that worried, anxious bodies and minds do not perform well. Okay, so the final thing I want to talk about is really how can we nudge ourselves, our colleagues, our employees to feel better, to improve our well-being, and to allow this parasympathetic nervous system to do its job. Okay, so there's a few things we can consider, and the first one, at the risk of sounding like an old hippie, but this is firmly rooted in neuroscience, is we have to remember to breathe. Okay, why? Well, because if we practice deep breathing, even just for a few minutes, it literally breaks the stress signal to our amygdala in our brain. It cuts that neural pathway signal, deep breathing, okay? So in other words, it shuts down our sympathetic nervous system, our stress response, and it allows our calm parasympathetic nervous system to work, okay? Now, you in your industry are all very familiar with the success of the 5-a-day marketing campaign, fruit and vegetables, right? So I would encourage you to try to set up a new system of 5 a day for breathing, okay? So 5 minutes, don't tell me you don't have 5 minutes in your day. Everybody has 5 minutes. Think of all the hours we spend scrolling on our phones, looking at television screens blankly. 5 minutes a day to practice deep, calm breathing, okay? If there are crazy people in your house, lock yourself into your bathroom, take your phone with you, put on some quiet music, and practice some deep breathing. So just check in with me for a moment to see what that's like for you in this moment. Just check in and see if you can tell what your breathing is doing. Where is your breath? Are you maybe holding your breath subconsciously? If you are, let it out. Is your breath fast or slow? And let's just practice taking a couple of deep breaths so you can see how easy it is. So, working with me for a moment, I want you to take a big deep breath in through your nose, inhaling, and a long, slow, gentle blow out. Good, let's try that again. Sniffing in and blowing out. And this time as you do it, one final time, allow your face to soften, your shoulders to drop, and let go of any worries that you have in this very moment. So, sniffing in and blowing out. Good. So 5 minutes a day, deep breathing helps our body hugely. It allows us to respond to things instead of to react. And that's a subtle but really important difference. Now, you might find it easier to use an app like Headspace or Calm. Maybe in your workplaces, you might want to set up mindfulness sessions in situ or by video link. But I would encourage you to have that conversation with your employees so that you can discuss their needs in their specific environments. Okay, and speaking of environments, I think it's really important that you audit this new workplace environment that you will be returning to. Think about those who are still working from home. Is there anything you can do to support those kinds of environments? And one key thing is the importance of taking a proper break at work. This will improve people's well-being a lot. Okay, so during breaks or lunchtime, if we can encourage people to eat nutritious, healthy food or snacks, maybe you can set up a program of exercise at work through organized short classes or encouraging self-directed activities outside. If you have an environment where you have access to an outside space, I would really encourage you to get your staff outside for a few minutes walk or even for a few minutes breathing. Okay, some of the research that I'm involved in is this relationship between nature, outdoors and well-being. And research has proved that being in nature really improves our well-being. It reduces our blood pressure, it reduces our heart rate, it improves our mood, it improves our physical fitness, and it improves us overall, I think, even to the level of our self-esteem. And another area that I'm particularly passionate about is the relationship between water and well-being. I'm lucky enough to live near the sea. I wild swim all year round. And the research is coming out to really prove this as well, is that blue space, which refers to all visible water, oceans, seas, lakes, rivers, ponds, fountains, water features, all of these increase what's called blue mind. So red mind is when we're really stressed and anxious, but blue mind is when we are in a state of calm and our parasympathetic nervous system is at work. Okay, so research shows us that water helps to improve our well-being. Now, if you're not lucky enough to live near it, then you can find your own water in your daily life, hopefully. Even to the extent of taking a relaxing bath at night, or if you're brave enough, I really suggest taking the last 2 minutes of your shower and switching it to the cold setting. See if you can withstand a minute at first, increase it to 2 minutes, and it has a huge impact on anxiety, depression, and mood because it stimulates our nervous system in a really positive way. So those are some of the things that we can do to improve our well-being. And I think just to also follow up on that last point, I think lockdown has really made us as humans appreciate nature once more. So it would be great if we could keep that going and remember how good it was for us. So those are some of the coping strategies. Just to sum up with what I've said today, in terms of what you can do to improve well-being at work as we return to work. First of all, acknowledge the changes that have taken place. Secondly, ask, listen, and acknowledge some of the things that your employees are going through. Thirdly, understand what stress is and the impacts it can have on our bodies and minds and our overall performance. And finally, consider some of the options that we have available to us to cope with all of this. So that's it for me. Thanks for watching. I wish you all the best and go gently.